Welcome back to another episode of The Power of Your Story, a space for people to share their story, learn from their story, and ultimately empower others through their story. Today's guest is a good friend of mine who I was very fortunate to meet in a marketing class at a college that both him and I attended. So actually, one of the shout outs that I want to make is to Mary Heidler for choosing to teach that class to begin with. And ever since, just him and I have been able to stay in each other's lives and keep in touch. And I'm just really proud of the person that he has become and continues to strive for. And I wanted to bring him onto the show to have this conversation around this concept of service and ultimately what does one learn and how can one best leverage the knowledge that they currently have to serve others. But before we get into today's episode, I wanted to make a few quick announcements. First one being, to all of our listeners that are tuning in right now, and that is if you've enjoyed any of the previous episodes, please consider leaving us a review on Facebook or LinkedIn. And if you're tuning in right now, whatever the questions, whatever the feedback you might have, please feel free to share it in the comments, and we'll be sure to respond to it throughout the episode. Now, let's get back to the show. Jerald.
Here we are, man.
Oh, man, it's so awesome. Who would have known that this would be the journey where after graduation, we'll be having this conversation however many years down the road. And, I truly meant it. I think meeting in Mary's class and then just being able to see kind of the brief potential that each one of us had and exploring that. And then from there, choosing to stay connected, that really made the difference. So shout out to Mary and Craig and everyone else in that department, because they really, I don't know what they've done for you, but for me, they've really helped me see life through a completely different lens and just develop that perspective.
Absolutely. They were always giving us the knowledge and putting us in the position to be successful, and really just trying to give us as their students any opportunity that they could. So a shout out to them is due indeed.
Yeah. Do you keep in touch with either of them still?
A little bit here and there. I haven't spoke to Mary in probably 2 or 3 years now. Craig, I share messages with him here and there a little bit more often, but I'm not as regularly as I'd like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're incredible human beings, and
Mhm.
I'm grateful for crossing paths with them and everything that we've done. But I'm also grateful just to have this conversation for a couple of different reasons. So I remember, well, when I met you, you were in the wrestling space and you were trying to figure out, how can you make this a reality moving forward and things like that. And then here you are actually doing it. And even in this past year, seeing the transformation that you've gone through, I was just fascinated by and just looking at someone else who's doing and living the story and the life. I was like, wow, that is incredible. Everything that you've accomplished. I don't know if you've had a chance to really reflect upon it all and understand that you've come a long way from where you started.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you in saying that, and I'm certainly not alone because you have as well, and I think that just speaks to the type of like what you get as a first impression from a person really is important, because I want to say from the moment I got the opportunity to meet you and just maybe see you do some presentations or hear you speak, I could just tell that there was something about you that you're a person like me, and that you're looking to pursue something greater and something further.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what had attracted us into becoming friends and staying in touch as much as we have over the past few years.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think seeing that drive in the other person, such as yourself, that was the moment. I was like, I've got to find a way to stay in Gerald's life,
Yep.
whatever the lengths I got to go to. But I'm grateful that we're able to have this conversation. And what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to create a space for this conversation around this concept of martial arts.
Mhm.
and in particular what you've been up to. And I think the best way that maybe to even approach that angle, because I know that myself included, there's so much about it that I don't know.
Yep.
There's so many stigmas, there's so many expectations and assumptions that I make because I'm just truly not engaged in it as much to even understand what that thing entails. So best way that I could think we can maybe even start this conversation is when you wake up in the mornings
Mhm.
and when you choose to do what you're doing, what is the choice that you make? Because I know that one of the assumptions that I used to think was that anyone who's a fighter, the choice that they make is that they choose violence.
Mhm.
But the reality of the matter is I think it's slightly different than that. So I wanted to ask you that, like, do you consciously recognize what is the choice that you wake up with and why you do what you do?
Absolutely, and it's a combination of a few things. For me, it's not really about me so much. It's bigger than that, and it's about the people that have chosen to believe in and support me my entire life. So I grew up in a small town in Southeast Ohio, New Lexington, Ohio. It's a part of like what they would call Appalachia, Ohio. A little bit of a lower income area, amazing people. But one thing that's always been consistent is through any trials and tribulations, successes, failures, no matter what, those people as far as well as the others that I've ran into in my life have always been incredibly supportive, have always believed in me wholeheartedly, and have never done anything but tried to help me in any way, shape, or form. So a
Mm,
lot of what I do is to almost repay their belief, because someone's belief in you is them spending their energy, their thoughts, their time, potentially their money in you. And I just want to show anyone that has ever done that in regards to me is not wasting their time, their energy, their thoughts, or their money, and that it's
mhm,
it's going towards something that they could be proud of and enjoy. That's one of the things that's on the forefront of my mind, as well as it's the way that I found that I can express myself the most. This is the way that I can be the most self-expressive through. It's not through the violence, it's through the what I call the beauty and chaos.
mhm.
So for me, I've tried to draw, I've tried to do some graphic designing, stuff like that. It doesn't really work for me. I don't have a very steady hand when it comes to the pen, and so some of that graphic design stuff comes kind of difficult for me. But it's just like I've always been a person that's felt the need and the desire to express themselves, and I think people all naturally do. We just all do differently.
Mhm,
And for a while, sports have been a mainstay. It was football, it was wrestling, um, but once I started fighting in mixed martial arts, it was on a totally different level than I have ever seen, because really, you're not restricted to one style.
mhm,
As long as you can go in, do what you need to do and get out. Nobody's really concerned as much as how you do it, as long as it's within the rules.
mhm.
And I can go in, a dark gym with either my teammates and a full coaching staff, or maybe, early in the morning by myself, and just, perfect, 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 and work on my craft, work on my craft, work on my craft. And I truly enjoy it and truly have so much fun, and get so much out of it personally. And then when I go compete, I have people that, are willing to spend money, buy tickets, come do it, cheer for me. I've got my favorite video I've ever seen. My For my last fight, my buddy's garage was filled with probably 50 to 60 people I went to high school with. And
That's awesome.
when the fight ended, they all went nuts. And I have, honestly, it's one of the coolest and like most like emotionally awesome things I've ever seen. Like, that video I will keep forever and I will watch forever, because like that means a lot to me.
Mhm,
So it's really a combination of showing the people that believe in me that their belief isn't for naught, as well as it's how I can express myself best.
at what point did you personally start to believe that this is something that you can actually do as a form of living?
So I've always believed in myself and anything that I've done, but there's always like a next step, a next
Mm-hmm.
level, at least in my brain. So I never believe that I can't hit a certain level, but you almost have like those markers where it's like, this is a sign where it's like, oh, like I knew that I could, but I just proved to myself, like I proved to myself that I really could. And
Mm-hmm.
it was honestly probably my second MMA fight, because it was just incredibly tough. The dude, me and the other guy's skill level was the same, and I had to dig incredibly deep, not only physically but mentally, to be able to be successful, and I was able to. And also just the reaction of people that had been in the sport for much longer than I have, looking at me and commending me in such ways that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, like they've, this coach has been doing this for 25 years. I've been doing it for 3, and I'm a year and a half in, and he's like, hey, keep it up. You're going to be there. You can do this. And I'm like, well, if he's telling me that, I'm inclined to believe it myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm always fascinated by, I think, what you just briefly hinted on, like the mindset when it comes in the moment. Because I was sharing this story with a couple of my other friends and people that were on the show previously. When I went and hiked the Grand Canyon recently,
Hmm.
there became a point where literally in my mind, I just continued to repeat one more step,
Yep.
because it truly got that difficult. I mean, it was to the point where my body was wanting to give up, as I'm sure you've experienced. And then I just said, one more step, mind over body, one more step, mind over body, for like
Hmm.
3 miles straight,
Yeah.
nonstop. But I'm wondering, in your situation, especially when you get into the ring, what is that story that you're telling yourself in your head that allows you to get through some of these challenges, or get through the hurdles of your body wanting to do nothing but to give up? Like, do you have a specific narrative that you formed prior, or is that something that kind of forms in the moment just based on the energy and the atmosphere, and then also the opponent that you're facing?
It's a little bit of both. The one thing that I can say is consistent is, it's funny, I really like to show and to I really like to show and express to anyone I ever meet, like, hey, I'm a regular guy. You might view what I do as extraordinary. We're the same. I still wake up. Obviously everyone has their differences. We're all different people and unique, but
Mm-hmm.
I still get up every day, put socks on, put my shoes on, and go to work. Like, I'm not anything special, but at the same time, you know, the reason why an athlete such as myself is looked at and followed and revered in a way that they are is because we are looked at as like Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because we have these abilities that people may not have, and that they deem impressive, and that they're interested in and excited about. So
Mm-hmm.
part of it is the fact that I can't show in that moment that I'm not Superman, because it's not so much for myself or my own ego or anything. At the end of the day, if all this crashes and burned, I went for it. I tried as hard as I could, and I've had a damn good time doing it. I'm happy with that. Um, but at the same time, I can't, in front of these people that believe that I can do anything,
Mm-hmm.
prove them wrong, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to take this belief that they have, and the strong belief that they have, and ruin it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found the same exact thing, I think, throughout my journey. Like when I first started to get into this space and really
Mhm.
trying to manifest it. I mean, there were times where I fell down. There's still times where I fall down,
Mhm.
more times. But I think that the difference there is being able to get back up and continue to keep going. And I've also realized that when it comes to people come into your life at different stages. I'm a huge
Mhm.
believer in the whole reason, season, lifetime, because that is what explains many of the people that have been in my life. And so
Yeah.
there are some people that came into my life and they believed in me for a day, others did it for a week, but there's still a core group of people who continue to believe in me. And it almost like it doesn't even matter what the project that you pursue. They just believe in you as a person, that you
Yep.
have what it takes, and if you don't, you'll find a way to find that thing or find that it factor within you. And so I'm a huge believer in that. And I'm also curious to hear from you something that you just pointed out, as far as almost like being idolized as an
Mhm.
athlete, being looked upon for having these quote unquote supernatural abilities. How do you reframe that as someone who is that person, but is being looked upon differently? Like, what's your own journey that you take yourself on to understand that, okay, someone else's expectations and assumptions don't have to become my form of reality.
Mhm. It's having a balance, and it's having a balanced mind and a balanced lifestyle. Because for as much as I do believe in myself in that way as well, and I have to from a confidence perspective, so that I can go out and perform the way in which I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very balanced in knowing that I'm also a different person outside of that realm. I am my own very unique person. I cannot remember where I heard it. Um, I think it was actually a Gary V video a few days ago, and he's spot on. So we're all there. All of us have multiple versions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be MMA like the fight day, fight night in the cage, Jerald, when I'm walking down the street, or else I'd be in jail. We
That's an
we all
important
have.
thing to recognize.
Yes. So I think it's having that balance. There's MMA, in the fight, Jerald, that has to be a little bit of a different person, that has to be okay with hurting another individual for a greater cause. And then as soon as that, 15 to 25-minute window of the fight is over and I walk out of that cage, I'm back to being okay. Now the fight's over. It's recovery, regular everyday, joke around, goofy Jerald, that make jokes that most people don't laugh at, but I throw a lot of volume out there, so I get like 1 out of every 10 gets a laugh. I think recognizing that, and I think people sometimes look at that as like, oh, you're one person over here and you're another person over here, and that's tricky too, because it's not that you're a different person, it's that you're a slightly adjusted version of yourself for different moments. You can't, if you're a preschool teacher, you might not be able to say all the adult words or
Yeah.
act as you would completely at home, because you're influencing the minds of very young children. I
Mm-hmm.
teach kids at the gym, so although I'm an adult that might drink adult beverages and do other things, like outside of that, when I'm teaching the 6 and 7 year olds at the gym how to throw a punch, like I can't be that person. I need to be good role model, proper person, speak without swearing, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I think it's recognizing that it's all balance. And although that there are these people that see me as like superhero Jerald, like that, I need to believe that for the period of time that I'm competing and when I'm training, but
Mm-hmm.
like I don't need to walk around every day like, yeah, like I'm awesome, So yeah.
Jessie Spawn has joined us here. She
Oh
says
yeah.
hello from home.
Yeah, that's my brother's wife. Yeah.
That's
That
awesome.
that looks like that's my son, but that is not my son. uh, I always give her and my brother flack. I'm like, that is my child. Look at his hair.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's an interesting point that you bring up in regard to managing one's image, and I think persona as well. I chose to do
Mhm.
a similar thing, as far as understanding after a while your words do matter.
Yep.
And there are people that listen and tune in and choose to make their own changes based on how it is that you're living your life and documenting that life.
Mhm.
And so to a degree, for me, I just found that as a form of responsibility. Like, now I'm responsible, and something that you mentioned at the very beginning, it's like, it's no longer about you.
Mhm.
It becomes about it becomes about the community and the collective. Now, yes, you still have to wake up and you still have to do the work in order for the other things to exist. But as far as the impact goes, it's significantly larger now than just one
Yep.
person.
100%. And something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch on, you talked about, um, falling down, and the fact that, you fall down more than you stand up, or however you worded it.
Mm-hmm.
People confuse like falling down or failing as like the end all be all. Falling down is a requirement to be great.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a requirement to be good, and it's a requirement to be bad. Falling down is a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
I, things for me have been great lately. Nothing to complain about, nothing going on. I woke up this morning super congested, my head hurt. Like I'm definitely not sick. I don't know what it is, just maybe a sinus or allergy thing. But like didn't really feel like doing anything today, but I didn't allow that to change who I was, what my priorities are, and what I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think people confuse, falling down as a sign that they need to just stop completely, when in reality, it's just a part of it,
Mm-hmm. What does failure mean to you now?
an opportunity to learn.
Mm.
I used to, when I was younger and less mature, um, I, I didn't, I would kind of run away from it. I would try to hide from it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a particular, a wrestling tournament my dad took me to that had a lot of great competition, and I did like okay. I think I went 2-2, won 2 matches, and then had 2 really good guys I wrestled and lost. And when we went home, my dad recorded everything. When we went home, I watched the 2 matches I won, and then deleted the 2 matches I lost without even looking at them. I think I was like 14 or 15,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't realize it at the time. But even just a few years later, I was like, man, that was stupid. Like that was so stupid, because I could have watched those matches I lost, saw where my mistakes were, saw where the other guy took advantage, where I could have improved. So I missed important teaching and learning moments from that,
Mm-hmm.
because I let my emotions get the best of me, and I made an emotionally driven decision instead of taking it as a moment to learn and being like, okay, like that sucked, whatever, it's fine. I should be excited about this because this is an opportunity. I went against someone that was more elite than me. It gives me the opportunity to be like, okay, I got to make sure that I fix that so he's not able to do that to me again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had the same exact experience. A friend of mine, shout out to him. His name is Andrew Betancourt. I was roommates with him at the time. And when I was first starting the podcast, he
Mm-hmm.
actually made me listen the first 10 or 20 episodes. And trust me, it was painful. It
Yeah.
was it was painful to listen to something that you're just starting off, and I didn't even know how to form the questions nor ask the questions. Anxiety was through the roof because
Mm.
everything was live, recorded, and some of the things that you truly couldn't change, they were in the moment for what they were. But I realized that that was such an important thing that he helped me realize is the importance of going back and studying the film,
Yep.
studying it to the point of understanding, like, what is the progression that you're making? And are
Mm-hmm.
you actually making incremental steps to better yourself, whether it's not equipment, but more so just as a person, even having the ability to carry a conversation. I mean, it's a night and day from where I started, from episode 1 to whatever it is now, hundreds. But I realized that doing the same exact thing as you had just described, going back to the drawing board and seeing that film over and over again and allowing myself to understand, okay, here are the things that I would like to change or I would like to see differently. And then from there, kind of approaching it by chapters. And like one chapter, I'm going to focus on the language. Next chapter, I'll do the audio. The one after that, the video. Instead of trying to get the whole picture all at once,
Yep.
because I know that was a tendency for me, and I don't know if that was a tendency for you as
Mm-hmm.
well. Wanting to make the whole Picasso painting all in
Yeah.
one sitting, when in the reality, it's just like, okay, that's not actually how life works.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's kind of human nature a little bit too, because
Mm-hmm.
um, everyone, you fall in love with the romantic version of whatever it is you want to do. Like that big fight for the title. That podcast where you have that guest on that it's gonna really, like make your views go through the roof and get the word out and help spread a positive message. But here's the beauty in everything that comes before that. My very first fight ever was on the biggest stage against the biggest person ever. I would have came out with a huge failure that I might not have learned much from, because I, when you try to do something like that, that is one of those failures. You could learn some, like what you would learn from that is I tried to run before I could even crawl.
Mm,
So the beauty in the beginning, let's say you start a new YouTube channel, you do it for a few months, you get 50 or 60 subscribers, and you're like, man, I'm doing this, every week, and it's not really building up. Well, you also got to realize this is practice time.
mm-hmm.
Would you have wanted episode 1 to be viewed by millions of people and then look in the comments and everyone's like, wow, the production quality is not great.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of stumbling, like, yada, 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 all this stuff. When, on video, 789, when you're finally there and finally have that audience, the first 200 might have been crap. The next 200 might have been good, and then that last 200 started to be really good, and then you're kind of ready to be prepared for that audience. So
Mm-hmm.
there's beauty in the beginning and middle parts before you get to the top. I always tell people that, you know, like the dream for me isn't when I'm on TV and I win the belt. The dream is now, because like that's gonna be like when I'm like at that point, I'm like, man, like I'm almost done. Like I'm at the
Yeah.
end, you know, you know, maybe I fight a few more times, you know, but the fun part is now. The fun part is getting there and seeing the changes. Like if I look at a video for myself a year ago, I'm a drastically different fighter. But if I look at myself from year 10 to 11 from fighting, I might be a little bit better, but you know, like it's hard because a lot of that improvement comes at the front end.
When did you start to look at your whole journey and start to look at the beauty within it all? Like, what actually inspired that?
I only really started looking at it this way within the past year. Honestly, I think being alone during quarantine helped. I that was kind of one of those things that like I was like, man, like this is really gonna get a lot of people like being at home alone and having to look in the mirror, because you know, I'm good with that. But at the same, it got me too, because it wasn't in terms of like a man, like I needed to change my life. It gave me the opportunity to reflect on it, being
Mm,
caught up in the rat race. And it's one of those things about trying to perfect a craft and trying to continually grow. You forget to look back, because there's learning to be had from just looking back to your last week, month, or year. And
mm-hmm.
you forget to do that at times. And also, like you had said, you know, I forget at times, like, you know, I have a bad practice or two and I'm super down and I'm like, man, this sucks. Like, what is going on? And then I forget to realize, like, well, you know, over the past 3 years, I fought countless times. I've made a lot. You know, you forget to remember the good things just because of a few minor moments.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also probably goes or ties into the recognizing the small victories
Hmm.
along the way. And what I love what you mentioned about the whole thing of looking at the belt and being on TV or whatever that version looks like for you. I look at those things as just milestones now.
Hmm.
They're no longer like I have to get here and
Yep.
it has to be this way. It's more so like whatever the way that it chooses to reveal itself, that's the way that I'm going to go on. But those things are just milestones. And then that question that actually my late uncle passed on to me, and it's what's next? Like it's something that's ingrained within me now. So I
Yep.
get to this thing and then that question still remains the same. What's next? What's after that? What's the next step within the journey? Instead of looking at it's like I have to get to this point and that's where my career makes sense. That's where my life makes sense. More so approaching it, I think, through a similar lens that you are. Like my life can make sense now. And I am living a dream. And yes, it may not be the dream version that someone else is telling me, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that I'm still not living it now.
Absolutely.
And that I
I
think is the big difference. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I was actually gonna say I think that's the difference um between getting caught up in what you're doing and recognizing what you're doing. And I think that's an important distinction to make. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people get caught up at work, people get caught up with you know, stuff going on at home, what it might be. But once you start to recognize what it is that you're really doing, then you'll start to see, one, is it what I should be doing? Two, what changes do I need to make? And three, is this the path I really want to be on?
Mm-hmm. What have you learned about your? I know we touched upon this, the belief, and then also the support group that you've had around you,
Hmm.
throughout this journey. I'm curious to hear when it comes to the people in your life, how do you process those that have only been there for the one day, the one week, the month? Like, do you take those things personally, or was there a time where you did take them personally as far as what did I do wrong to now no longer have these people in my life in the way that they were, or do you just like let it go and embrace it for what it is?
For myself, I would say that um, I may be I may be quick to I kind of have a line where,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty a pretty far line. It's not a short leash. It's a little bit of a longer leash, just because I do believe in people and look for the best in people. But there's kind of a line for me when something or someone I feel has crossed it. There's not really any going back. I think that
Mm-hmm.
has to do with, you know, my childhood and the experiences I had growing up with, with my mom and stuff like that. So it's just hard for me. Like once I feel like you've like shown that you don't have respect for me, or you've left me, like I'm not there for you anymore. But at the same time, like I think it's just also being conscious of the fact that we are all different people with different lenses, with different goals, all trying to live in one life together.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to do a much better job that understanding if someone comes at me with something, that it might be from a place of like, I need help. You know,
Mm.
it's not that they're angry with me. It's not that there's anything wrong with me. So I've I've actually found that a lot of conflict is avoided, and it actually switches quickly from from a situation that may be conflict to one in which you can really bond and or make progress with a person, when you're not approaching them. People are approaching each other as a head to head, when in
Mm-hmm.
reality we're all here together. So
Mm-hmm. What was your childhood like? I don't even think I know much about that.
so first of all, I want to say that, like, in some ways it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not about the, oh, poor me, all this and that. My dad was incredibly supportive. I have two great brothers. Parts of my family are really great, but also my mother was an alcoholic. She deeply loved me and my brothers, for sure. She just had those demons, you know, drink some alcohol, have some traumatic experiences,
Mm-hmm.
you're a mean person. So it was very turbulent. I use this word a lot in my life now, and I think it's probably why, with a lot of chaos. And I think that's why I've grown to embrace it, and maybe thrive in it, because like it's what I had to do growing up. Shit getting thrown around the house, people arguing, um, you know, me getting slapped in the face at like 6 years old. Like, like I gotta, like, for me, it wasn't like I never receded into, oh my God, poor me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do? I just always kept rolling, like, okay, whatever, like, on to the next thing. So, um, thankfully, like I said, in our community, I've always had a lot of people that have looked out for me,
Mm-hmm.
and that knew our family well. And I always had places to go and people to support me. So I can't honestly peg it as, a bad childhood. But at the same time, like, my mom lost her life to alcohol and drugs, as well as there being quite a bit of traumatic experiences tied to that, involving myself and our family.
I can relate. I can
Yeah.
relate to much of what
Hmm.
you described. I
Yeah.
think living in similar circumstances when it comes to my own mom and alcohol, there's only so much that I was able to do as a
Yep.
kid and
Hmm.
understand. And I don't even think I understood much of it the way they
Hmm.
understand it now. It was more about, okay, this is happening. How do you keep going?
Yeah. Hmm.
How do you keep
It,
finding a way to get to the next day? I think that was more so the mindset than anything.
Absolutely. And I think even just like in the moment, like navigating the situation, and like figuring out, like, just trying to understand what's going on. You're a kid, and it can be quite hard to even grasp it, because your mind's not all that developed. And honestly, I think the reason why that I have the head on my shoulders that I do now is because those experiences, and probably with you as well, caused our brains to mature a little quicker, because they had
Mm-hmm.
to. It was we got to figure out what's going on to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll also add on to it. I think there are certain experiences throughout my life, and the reason why I say it is because this is what I personally believe in. But I think there's certain experiences that had to happen the way that they did for
Mhm.
me, because those are the things that have given me the opportunity to find purpose, find meaning, transform the hardship into a place of learning, opportunity. And had I not had some of those difficult childhood experiences, I don't think you would be talking to the same person that you are today. And I bet probably a similar thing applies to you.
Well, and this is gonna sound weird. I think you'll understand, and I think if the people listening, take some time to think about it, they'll understand as well. My my purpose
Mhm.
was to was to go to school, get a college education, and make a ton of money to put my mother in rehab and to fix our whole family situation.
Mm-hmm.
I decided that at around 15 or 16. My mom passed away when I was 17. If my goal had stayed, if she did not pass and my goal had stayed that, I don't know if I play college sports, maybe, I'm certainly not living the lifestyle and committing myself to fighting as much as I am right now, because this isn't about money for me. You don't make shit as a fighter until you're at the top. Like, you don't really make money until you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't even know if I'm pursuing the thing that I'm the most passionate about if my mom is still here on this earth. So the way that I have chosen to take in her passing is that in order for me to truly live a fulfilling and a very purposeful life in the way that I was meant to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was one of those things that, like, it just needed to happen. Like, that might sound a little
Mm-hmm.
dark, but for me, I'm probably not I'm not able to have as broad of an impact with the world. Um, you know, if that happens, I might have had one phenomenal impact with one person in our family, maybe, but for me, I'm willing to die in a cage in a fight because of what I believe in, and for the belief that I'm meant to do something greater.
Mm-hmm. And I share your belief or mindset around that because I look at life through a similar lens. I think there's certain events, not even certain events, I'll say every single event that has happened in my life, they had to happen the way that they did.
Yep.
Now, I think there's a difference between the event taking place and you choosing to articulate meaning from it. I
Yeah.
think that's the difference. But there's certain events that literally just happen in their own sequence. I've experienced the same exact thing with, or similar thing with my mom. In fact, I think it was the year after I was adopted, she passed away.
Hmm.
So now I don't have an opportunity to see her, to say the things that I've been wanting to say to her for however many years. But at the same time, maybe that's just part of the journey.
Hmm.
Maybe that's just part of the journey of understanding this is the way the event happened. This is how it took place. And now the question is, how do you choose to respond to those circumstances?
And I think that's where you get to decide what meaning you extract from from these types of things. That's the beauty of it. I could
Mm-hmm.
have taken that and I could have let it crush me. I could have let it, pour me. What do I do? Wah wah wah. But
Mm-hmm.
I've taken it and allowed that to make me such a better person. And that's what's important from this entire thing here is taking an experience that's quite tragic and that most people would be like, well, how do you take something positive from that? And I've actually let it drive me to live a very positive and impactful life.
How do you remember your mom? How would
Uh,
you like to remember your mom?
my mom was the most outspoken, like like outspoken, like, but in a good way, like awesome, rambunctious, like crazy woman. Like it was just that, a little bit of alcohol and some pills mixed in and it went overboard. But the thing that I love is I do see a lot of myself in my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was, in the moments where she wasn't under the influence of something, a very sweet, very nice, very caring person. A lot of fun, and just kind of like always wanted to be the life of the party. And whether I wanted to be or not, that's what was given to me.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got my mouth from my mother, not my dad. And 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 I don't know. It's really cool to see that the redeem. I feel very blessed in the fact that I feel like the redeeming qualities of both of my parents are all of the ones that I got.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really struggle with addiction. So that's something that I feel very lucky to have not had passed down to me. My dad is a workhorse. My dad will always, put the boots on and do what needs to be done to take care of things. Um, and my mom was always fun and caring, and my dad was as well. But I do feel like that I was blessed to have, like, I got the best qualities of both of them.
Mm-hmm. What's your relationship like with your dad?
Oh, it's awesome. My dad's like one of my best friends. I talk to him on the phone weekly. We live about 3.5 hours away from each other, so we see each other as much as we can. He's like He's in my whole life barely missed any football games, barely missed any wrestling matches. I don't think he's missed a fight, maybe one. Um, and I think it was the one that I took on 10 days notice, so I couldn't blame him for in the middle of a pandemic not being able to get a ticket to Florida to to watch me fight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's great. He's been an incredible influence on my life, and one that he really for me was in the middle of a turbulent childhood, the piece of stability that allowed me to feel like I had a normal childhood and I was like other kids. There
Mm-hmm.
was food on the table. Like I never had to worry about if the lights were going to be shut off. Um, you know, and if I told him like, hey, I really want to go to this wrestling camp, but it's $2,000, he would be like, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna, I'm gonna make $2,000 for you so you can go to this wrestling camp, and he would. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad's been nothing but amazing, and uh, he's lucky to hold on to that title because I'm coming for him for the title of best dad. So that's how I'm gonna repay him, by being a better dad somehow. So
That's
yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Was that important for you, for him to show up to all the things that you were a part of?
Yeah, I thought it was important because those were the moments in which, like, I feel like I saw my dad's personality the most.
Mm,
Because my dad's he's a old farmer type, a little more quiet, stoic, just a hardworking, soft-spoken dude. Um, unless you get him a little drunk, and then but it's for me, it's like, I'd score a touchdown in a football game, and I'd look over, and my dad that had always just kind of been like, a little more quiet, kind of to himself at home, is freaking out in the stands, jumping around, hugging his best friend, like, and it was more important in that regard, and I think that's where my tie to being like, and I feel like I've always meant to be an entertainer in some way, shape, or form. I feel like
mhm,
that's where it comes because, like, in all this craziness that was going on, if I was doing something that others perceived as exceptional and I was bringing them joy, nothing else mattered. The
mhm,
shit going on at home didn't matter. Like the things I felt when it was going on didn't matter. Like, and I think that's kind of where the inception of that began.
mm. Gerald, tell me a little bit more about how do people connect with you? Do you have anything that's coming up? For those that are watching right now, I'm putting his website at the bottom, but anything that people can find, anything that people can engage in that you have in the moment right now?
So on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, just at Jerald Spohn, you'll be able to find me. I think on like TikTok, it's Jerald Spohn 18. Um, we do have a podcast, me and one of my best friends that also fights, called Hard to Kill. And what Hard to Kill is it's more than just the literal translation. It's a mindset, working to be extraordinary at something,
Mhm,
embracing the skills that make you different, and gearing yourself to be able to go further in what it is that you're passionate about. Um, are you okay with me sharing my screen
I don't know if that's possible,
here? Let's
but
see.
I'll definitely find. I can add it here. We can add it to the page here
Okay.
that we'll
Um,
be able to share it through.
cool. Well, anyway, so there's that. And yeah, so social media's on here, whatever it might be. But yeah, always feel free, if anyone took any pieces of information, could relate, have any questions, always reach out. Always send a message, and get a hold of me if you need to. So
That's awesome. I'm grateful that you and I were able to, do this and connect and be in each other's lives. It's
mhm,
it's it's been amazing to see your own transformation and the changes that you've been through in life. And like I said, for anyone that's looking forward to their own journey, but may have some questions or just trying to understand what that journey looks like, especially when it comes to the fighting world. I
mhm.
think it's perspectives like these, in my opinion, are necessary because it's like, why not learn from someone who's actively doing it?
100%. And I'm always, like I said, I'm always happy to field any questions. My thing is I'm always seeking understanding, so I'm always happy to provide information that helps you understand if I can. So
Hmm. Well, thank you. Thank you for being in my life, and thank you for being a part of the show.
Likewise, man. Don't plan on leaving it anytime soon.